Europe, 1943. The air war above the continent has become a slaughterhouse of steel and fire. Every day, formations of American B-17 bombers rumble across the clouds, hundreds at a time, engines droning like thunder. Below them, black flak bursts, bloom like poisonous flowers. Above them, German fighters dive out of the sun, fast and merciless. The gunners on those flying fortresses are barely more than boys, farmers, factory workers, and mechanics who learned to shoot in training camps, not battlefields. They grip their twin .50 caliber Brownings with frozen fingers, their world framed by glass and gun smoke. But when the enemy comes, everything they've been taught suddenly stops working. Tracer rounds streak through the sky, glowing red against the blue. The gunners aim straight at the oncoming Messerschmitts. Dozens of shots, perfect lines of fire, and yet the German planes slip through untouched, like ghosts. The problem isn't courage, it's physics. Bullets move slower than airplanes. Every round a gunner fires takes a fraction of a second to cross the sky, and in that fraction, the target moves. The faster the enemy flies, the further ahead you have to aim. But the gunners don't know how far ahead. The manuals say one thing, their instincts say another. And in the chaos of combat, instinct is usually wrong. The results are devastating. Entire bomber crews vanish in seconds. Tail gunners watch helplessly as fighters tear through their formations. The sky over Germany becomes a graveyard of aluminum and smoke. In briefing rooms across England, commanders demand answers. Why are so many bombers falling? Why are their gunners missing targets even when the sights are locked? The math doesn't add up, and neither does the survival rate. Somewhere, deep inside the confusion, a new question begins to form, not about bravery or bullets, but about time. What if they're not missing ahead, but behind? As winter closes over the airfields, engineers and gunners alike begin to realize maybe the way they've been aiming isn't just off, it's backward. And that revelation will soon change the skies forever.
January 1944. The airfields of eastern England are frozen in fog, but the briefing rooms burn with frustration. Charts, gun camera reels, and casualty reports pile up faster than the missions can fly. Every statistic tells the same story. The gunners are missing, again and again. The enemy is outmaneuvering not just men, but mathematics itself. Captain Howard Burhans, a calm-eyed engineer from the Army Air Force's Ballistics Division, studies the film footage frame by frame. German fighters flash across the screen in split seconds, tracer rounds chasing their tails but never connecting. The gunners are aiming where the enemy was, not where it will be. But what if that isn't the full story? What if the illusion of speed itself is lying to them? At the 8th Air Force Gunnery School, instructors begin to run new experiments. They mount machine guns to mechanical turrets and simulate enemy passes using fast-moving target drones. Over and over, they discover the same paradox. When the gunners aim ahead, their rounds consistently fly behind. When they aim slightly behind, their bullets hit dead on. The discovery makes no sense until Burhans brings physics into the conversation. He gathers a group of pilots, engineers, and psychologists around a chalkboard. "Gentlemen," he says, tapping his chalk against an equation, "your brain lies to you in motion. When the enemy dives past, your eyes are already late. You see the plane where it was a fraction of a second ago." The room falls silent. The problem isn't marksmanship, it's perception. The human eye can't track high-speed movement in real time, and the instinct to lead the target only amplifies the error. Burhans runs the math again. The tracer bullets take 0.3 seconds to reach a fighter 1,000 feet away. In that time, a Messerschmitt 109 moves more than 100 feet forward. The brain compensates wrong, and that's why every hit misses. It's a humbling revelation. The gunner's greatest enemy isn't the Luftwaffe, it's the human brain. To test the theory, a handful of squadrons quietly adopt the new method. Instead of leading, they adjust by instinct, aiming just behind where the fighter appears. At first, the gunners laugh it off. It feels absurd, suicidal even. But when the next mission over Bremen ends, the laughter stops. The crews return with fewer bullet holes and more confirmed kills. A new idea begins to spread across the airfields like rumor and wildfire. Aim behind the target. It defies logic, but it works. And soon, the war in the sky will never be the same.
Spring 1944. The first bomber groups to test the aim behind method are now flying deeper into enemy territory. Berlin, Dresden, and the Rhine. Word spreads through the ranks like a superstition. Some call it luck, others call it madness. But when the gunners return home alive, even the skeptics start to whisper, maybe there's something to it. Inside the freezing turrets, the lessons from training replay in the minds of the crews. The gunner tracks a streaking Focke-Wulf 19 cutting across the formation. His instinct screams to lead, but he remembers the briefings, the film, the math. He exhales, steadies his sight, and drags the barrels slightly behind. The guns roar, the tracers arc, lagging just enough to meet the enemy's path. The German fighter erupts in flame and spirals away. It works. Gun cameras capture the impossible, hits where logic says there should be none. Engineers at the gunnery school pore over the reels, comparing trajectories, bullet speeds, and frame counts. The physics holds. The aim behind technique is no fluke. It's a revolution in combat perception. Soon, this knowledge filters through to squadrons across the European theater. Crews start calling it the ghost lead. Instructors reframe their training entirely, teaching new recruits to trust counterintuitive reflexes, to delay, to anticipate the lag between sight and motion. Every flight becomes both a mission and an experiment in applied psychology. But success brings scrutiny. Military scientists demand proof that this method isn't just coincidence. Burhans and his team are ordered to produce a formal study before the generals authorize full adoption. For weeks, they work through night after night, plotting ballistic curves, analyzing frame-by-frame film, and running tests in wind tunnels. Their conclusion shocks even themselves. The human visual delay, roughly 1/10 of a second, creates a persistent aiming error at combat speeds. Correcting by aiming behind neutralizes it almost perfectly. It's not superstition, it's science, born from blood, fire, and failure. As bomber formations thunder toward Germany, the skies begin to tell the difference. The Luftwaffe pilots, once confident hunters, find themselves flying into invisible traps. American gunners who used to panic now fight with eerie calm. They trust the math. They trust the method. But behind the statistics and victories, another kind of tension brews. The enemy is adapting. German fighters begin to change tactics, attacking from angles where aim behind no longer applies. Burhans knows the race is on. The science that saves lives today must evolve faster than the enemy can outthink it. The experiment has taken flight, but so has the war.
Summer 1944. The Allies are preparing for D-Day, and the skies above northern France boil with anticipation. Every bomber, every gunner, every bullet matters. The aim-behind method has spread like wildfire through the air divisions. But this will be the moment that decides whether it's genius or madness. At dawn, hundreds of B-17s and B-24s roared off the runways of southern England. The men inside are no longer rookies. They're veterans, shaped by fire. Among them is Sergeant Tom Avery, a turret gunner who's lived through 15 missions already. He still remembers when he used to miss every shot. Now he breathes differently. He fights differently. The target? German rail yards near Caen. The mission? Clear the skies for the coming invasion. As the bombers cross the channel, the first contrails of enemy fighters appear, jagged scars of white cutting across the morning blue. Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs dive in, screaming like banshees. The gunners swing into motion, turrets rotating, belts of ammunition rattling through the feeds. "Enemy high! 2 o'clock!" someone shouts. Avery locks on. The old instinct kicks in. Lead the target, pull ahead. But he stops himself. He remembers the equation, the seconds of delay. Trust the math. He drags the guns behind the enemy's nose and squeezes the triggers. Tracers curve through the air, lagging just enough to intersect the path of the German fighter. The plane shudders mid-turn, bursts into flame, and disintegrates. One shot, one kill. Across the formation, the same miracle repeats. Fighters peel away in smoke trails. Crews who once prayed now operate with practiced calm. Every bullet seems guided by invisible precision. The airwaves buzz with disbelief and triumph. "They're going down! Behind the lead! Behind the lead!" In the command centers back in England, radio reports pour in. Air analysts listen in stunned silence. The kill ratio has doubled, maybe tripled. What once looked like coincidence is now undeniable proof. The new aiming method works, not just in theory, but in war. Captain Burhans watches the data roll in, hands trembling on the desk. Years of equations, skepticism, and trial have led to this moment. "We were never shooting wrong," he murmurs to himself. "We were just seeing wrong." That day, the Air Force records its highest kill count yet, with the lowest loss rate of the campaign. The difference between life and death was measured not in bravery, but in milliseconds. The engineers, scientists, and soldiers who dared to aim differently have rewritten the laws of survival in the air, and the world of aerial warfare will never look the same again.
Autumn 1944. The war is shifting. Allied bombers now fly with growing confidence, their formations tighter, their defense sharper. The aim-behind technique is no longer a rumor whispered in hangars. It's standard doctrine across the USAR Air Forces. Manuals are rewritten, training films are produced, and for the first time since the air war began, the gunners have an edge. Instructors at gunnery schools demonstrate the method on firing ranges, projecting film reels of attacking fighters across screens. Young recruits who once struggled to hit moving silhouettes now strike clean, precise shots. The science has turned instinct into discipline. Every bullet now carries the weight of a lesson learnt in blood. Across the Atlantic, Allied command reviews the new data. Kill ratios soar. Mission losses plummet. Squadrons once deemed expendable now return home intact. Engineers like Captain Burhans are quietly decorated, their work classified, but celebrated among those who know what it meant. Burhans himself refuses grand recognition. The real heroes, he says in an interview, were the boys who trusted what they couldn't believe. Psychologists and physicists begin publishing post-war analyses of the phenomenon. They call it perceptual lag compensation. What started as a desperate battlefield experiment becomes a foundational insight into human reaction time, knowledge that will shape not just warfare, but aviation training, sports, and even neuroscience for decades to come. In one particularly striking report, an Army scientist writes, "We discovered that courage alone does not hit a target, understanding does." Meanwhile, back in the hangars, crews engrave names on the sides of their planes, victories earned not by strength, but by vision. They paint a simple symbol beneath their turrets, a backward arrow, curved slightly in the direction of the enemy. It becomes an unspoken badge among gunners, the mark of those who learn to aim behind. The technique spreads to every corner of the Allied air forces, from Europe to the Pacific. American B-29 gunners adopted against Japanese interceptors, and the results are the same. Enemies fall faster, and bombers return with fewer empty seats. What began as an accidental revelation has now become an invisible standard, a quiet triumph of observation, mathematics, and human adaptability. The world, unknowingly, has been changed by the smallest of corrections, a fraction of a second, a few degrees of difference, and the courage to question everything. The war is ending. Across the shattered airfields of Europe, silence replaces the thunder of engines. Crews step out of their planes for the last time, the smell of oil and cordite fading into history. But their legacy, etched into the invisible laws of motion and mind, will never fade. In the post-war years, the lessons of aim behind migrate from combat manuals to classrooms. At the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, engineers study the data collected by Burhans and his team. They use it to refine flight simulators, teaching pilots to think in time, not just space. The principle that once saved bombers now fuels a new era of aerospace design. The discovery becomes a cornerstone of human factors engineering, the science of understanding how people perceive, react, and adapt under pressure. From aircraft cockpits to sports training, from video game design to virtual reality, the echoes of that wartime revelation continue to ripple outward. Humanity learns to see differently, to account for delay, to anticipate motion, to live just half a second ahead of itself. Captain Burhans retires quietly, his name forgotten by most outside the archives. But to the men who fought in those skies, he remains a legend, the man who taught them that survival was as much about thought as it was about aim. When he dies decades later, one of his former gunners leaves a small token at his grave, a bronze plaque of a backward arrow, the symbol they once painted beneath their turrets. At air shows and museums, visitors walk beneath restored B-17s and B-24s, their gleaming bellies reflecting sunlight. Few realize the hidden science those guns represent, the delicate balance of instinct and intellect that once turned defeat into dominance. Every rivet, every turret, every gun sight tells a scient truth. Progress begins the moment we stop trusting our eyes and start trusting understanding. Modern pilots still train with lessons derived from the aim-behind experiments. Even today, in the cockpits of jet fighters and drones, algorithms adjust aim and timing using the same logic born in the skies of 1944. The legacy lives on, in every calculation, every predictive model, every fraction of a second saved. History remembers the victories. Science remembers the reasons. And somewhere, in the echo of every gun fired, there's still a whisper from those airmen who first dared to aim the wrong way and changed the future forever.